Our guest this week on Personally Speaking is the great actor Michael Urie. He's starring now on Broadway in Spamalot. Stay with us. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Monsignor Jim Lisante, and actor Michael Urie joins me now. Michael hails from Plano, Texas, and trained at the Juilliard School. He's best known for his role as Marc St. James on the successful ABC dramedy series Ugly Betty. Michael has also appeared on hit shows such as Modern Family, The Good Wife, Younger, and Hot in Cleveland, among many others. He can be seen in Apple TV's series Shrinking, starring Harrison Ford, and he's currently starring on Broadway as Sir Robin in Spamalot. Michael's here with us today to talk about his life, his career, being back on Broadway, and the values that matter the most to him. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome back to Personally Speaking the great actor Michael Urie. Michael, thank you for coming back on Personally Speaking. It's been a lot of years since we last had you. For our listeners and viewers around the world, Michael's now starring in Spamalot. He is Sir Robin. And I got to ask you, I wanted to know if you really read these things, but every review that I've read about Spamalot has been wonderful, but particularly Michael Urie is getting glowing reviews. So I wondered, do you even read reviews? And if you read reviews that are great, like the ones you have right now that tell you the best things in sliced bread, do you also read reviews where you don't get wonderful reviews?
Good question. I do not read reviews,
Okay.
actually. I stopped reading reviews. I don't remember when it was. I haven't really read reviews. I've read a couple of reviews over the years, sort of on accident, um, and then out of in a couple of moments of weakness. But I'm pretty good at it. I haven't. It's been probably 16, 17 years since was a reader of reviews. And I just didn't find them helpful, even when they were good. Because when they're good, they're not good enough. And when they're bad, you either feel terrible about yourself or you dismiss them. And neither, like dismissing is silly too. Like they're just someone's opinion. And
Yeah.
but this is the thing, you always know how they are. You always know if they're good or not. And I had heard that they were good for
Yeah.
Spamalot, which is really, really nice.
Good.
And I'm so happy for the show. And of course, I'm glad people are appreciating what I'm doing. But I've also been in shows where that opening night party ends early because everyone read the review and it wasn't good.
And it kills
And
you.
so I just find for myself, I think that I get it. I understand why criticism is important, and I do sometimes read reviews of other things. Like if I usually wait until I've already seen it. If I've seen a film or a
Okay.
play that I really like, or I'm not sure about how I feel, sometimes I'll read a review and get somebody else's interpretation about it. Um, but but yeah, I think I'm a healthier person not reading them for
Right.
me.
Right.
Some people love it. Some people like to know where they stand. Some people like to know what people are saying about it, and I get it. And as much as I would like for negative opinions to not be in print, I
Mm.
understand the need for them.
Michael, just finished reading a book on Mike Nichols, the wonderful director, and I'm surprised at how sad criticism of any kind could make him, where it would send him
Yeah.
to despondency. I'm just wondering, because every actor gets notes from the director. When criticism comes, hopefully constructive, but criticism, just as a person since childhood till now, do you welcome it?
Um, yeah. Is that Mark Harris's book? That's a wonderful book.
Mhm.
I read that Mike Nichols book too. And I was also surprised that someone as brilliant as him would be affected. But yeah, I think I when I first started acting, I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think there was any I really didn't think I could do it. And to this day, I still will have imposter syndrome. So I think I've always been pretty good at taking criticism and if it's constructive and if it's part of
Right.
the work, like in a rehearsal situation or in during a shoot, if somebody has an adjustment or has a comment or a critique or an idea, I think I'm pretty good at it. There are times that pop into my head where I haven't been, and I've regretted it because I think I think the collaboration is really important, and I am not able to see what an outside eye is seeing. So it sort of would be foolish for me not to at least listen and entertain the idea that it might not be working what I'm doing, or that it might not be its best.
Right.
Um, but and so it can be really tough to take criticism sometimes, and especially if you don't agree with it.
Right.
Um, but I
That's the
like to
good
think I'm
thing.
pretty
You
good at it.
welcome it if it's constructive. Michael Urie, I guess, Michael, you were last on at least 7 or 8 years ago. And I mentioned that because I'm just wondering, you lived through, as we all did, the experience of the pandemic. And, in the priest business, life goes on. But when you're in creative arts, especially in theater, I presume a lot of life shut down. What did you do during that long period of an inability to be as creative as you normally would be?
It was not easy. There was some dark times for all of us, but I definitely experienced them. I was very lucky. I have wonderful partner who I share my life with, and we have a dog and a cat. So
Oh,
we
good.
were together. And actually, when the pandemic hit, when the shutdown started, I was in Los Angeles about to shoot a TV pilot, and and as soon as my show was canceled, my pilot was canceled, I ran to the airport to come home to be with Ryan.
Mhm.
And I'm so glad I did because that idea that 2 weeks, that we all remember, it'll be a 2 week shutdown, be a 2 week shutdown. That obviously didn't happen, and so I was so glad to be together. But also, my partner's a wonderful actor and writer, and we have in the past we have also made things ourselves, movies and podcasts and web series and things. So we got really creative during the pandemic. We did a lot of things together. We made a lot of things. We helped each other make a lot of things. Ryan made a whole movie all on Zoom that I helped him a little bit with. We did this. I did this one man play for a long time called Buyer and Seller that Jonathan Tolins wrote. Really, really brilliant play about a fictional story about a fictional guy who gets hired to work in Barbara Streisand's very real basement mall that we did off Broadway for a long, long time. And I was supposed to do it um, in like April, I think, of 2020 as a fundraiser. And when we couldn't do it live, we decided we'd do it in our apartment. So we cleared all the furniture, we lowered all the shades, and we put on the play on Zoom in our apartment, and we had two cameras rolling, and it was sort of like a two-camera sitcom, like where the angles would switch, and we did it live um, on Broadway.com as a fundraiser for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS, and we raised over $250,000.
Great.
And so like we kept very, very busy actually during the pandemic. And
Very
it's
creative.
all yeah, we got really creative. And especially as theater people, we were most worried, like we weren't so worried that film and TV would eventually come back, but the idea that like people wouldn't want to commune in a theater together was very scary to us. And so we wanted to help people in theater remember what that feeling was like. So that's why it was so important to me that it be live when we did Buyer and Seller in the living room, because that's the tightrope walk that we all love. It's not just the story and the production that we love when we go see theater. We love that it's happening before us, the feat of it happening right there in front of us.
The night before they shut down, I was going to a Broadway play, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and the next day they announced that one of the ushers who'd given us a program had been infected and was, positive. And we really thought for a second we might never be in theater again.
Yeah.
If we're sitting so close as people do in theater, and it's a
Yeah.
wonderful social experience, but not if you're frightened to death of a killer virus. I have to ask you too, because you mentioned it. Michael Urie has been around for a long time doing all sorts of stuff, movies and television, theater. But I kind of discovered him when he did Buyer and Seller, and I thought he just gave, as is Michael's way, great praise to the production and the writer. But uh, that the power of that play, for me at least, was your amazing performance. I mentioned that because I got to ask you, have you had a chance to pick up the 1,000 pound autobiography of Barbara Streisand yet?
No, I don't have the strength. I haven't picked it up, and I haven't the audiobook is 48 hours long. I think I might listen to it someday on fast forward.
Right,
I think
right.
that might be the way to do it. But I haven't. I sometimes, of course, because I did that play for so long, and because she's so beloved and she continues to like find her way back into the news. I always hear about everything that's going on with her from somebody, usually from many many different people. Um, but that show was so it was such a part of me, and I lived that show for so long that I kind of feel like I already lived the autobiography, even though I'm sure there are stories in there that I don't know.
Right.
I just can't imagine doing that show for so long. I did more than 500 performances, and anytime somebody would come that had any great Barbara Streisand story, personal or otherwise, I would hear it, and I got the greatest stories. And so I'm just like I'm so I'm so grateful for those personal anecdotes that I got from people, um, that I guess I don't feel the need for anything more, but I'm sure I'll listen to it eventually, or
Sooner
I'll
or
read
later,
the
all
book.
48 hours. Michael Urie is our guest. He's starring in Spamalot. I ask our friends and relatives from around the country who are coming to New York to go to see it. I just recommended it to a bunch of priests coming up from South Carolina and see Michael as Sir Robin. But I got to ask you too, because I'm intrigued by who you are, not just what you play. Not long ago on page 6 of the New York Post, of all things, they had a little blurb about you. But what was striking is it kind of captured you in that people get quoted on that page all the time for kind of nasty things they know about someone else, or they pile on to pick on people, and whatever they're asking you about, you came back typically as Michael Urie saying nice things about the people they were talking about. If they were looking for good dirt, they didn't get it from you. But it goes back to what's always been my impression of you is this incredible, and it's not a weak word, it's a good word, a kind and a nice man. Where does that come from in you?
Oh, well, that's very nice of you to say. I mean, I think a lot of it comes from my parents. I grew up in Texas, um, in the suburbs of Dallas,
Mm,
and also the suburbs of Houston, and my dad's from Oklahoma originally, my mom's from Texas. Um, and you know, uh, I grew up in an environment that had bigotry,
mm,
but my parents never, ever um, expressed any kind of bigotry, ever.
wow.
Um, Whereas I would meet people, know people that were homophobic or racist or sexist.
Mhm.
My parents were never that way. And I remember them having gay friends when I was a kid, and having um, friends that were people of color, and they never ever judged anyone, and so I was really lucky to have those people and to be in a place where that wasn't always the way.
Mhm.
Like there is bigotry in Texas, and it does certainly it does exist. But as far as like the showbiz of it all, because getting grilled on a red carpet can be tricky. Um, you never know what someone's going to ask you, and the camera's on you, the microphone's in your face, and you gotta roll with that, whatever it is. And so your brain has to act quickly and think fast. But I would also, like I always credit um my incredible co-stars in Ugly Betty, which was my first big break. This was this amazing TV show I was on about about a young woman who gets hired to work in a fashion magazine and really doesn't know anything about fashion, and hasn't ever lived her life the way a fashion magazine employee might. And I played one of the sort of mean fashionistas that worked there, and so there was a lot of bigotry in the show, comical bigotry, and there was good and evil, and the bad guys always got their just desserts, and the good guys always triumphed. Um, but we dealt with those issues a lot. And behind the scenes, we were a lot of newcomers and some veterans. So I was there. It was my first big break. We had Mark who was 11 when we started, so it was definitely his big break. Becky Newton was having a big break. Anna Ortiz was having a big break, and then we had Vanessa Williams, who was a star, and we had Judith Light, who was a star, and we had Tony Plana, who had been on every TV show in history from the 80s, 90s, and up until that point. And these three, who were kind of our leaders, um, they taught us the business. I mean, I felt like I learned the business from them, the business of working on a TV set, the business of being on a red carpet, the business of being famous. I learned from these three incredible people, and they taught me, all of us, and also America Ferrera, who was the star of the show. And even though she was only like 20 or 21 when we started, she was so ahead in years, such a much older soul, and she was immediately a household name when the show premiered. And I know she looked to Judith and Vanessa and Tony too, but we all looked to her
Wow.
as this sort of wunderkind that suddenly was a giant star. And I learned from Vanessa how to walk a red carpet, how to get spun in an interview, and Lord knows she was spun in a few interviews.
Yeah.
And I learned from Judith Light how to treat people on a crew, and I learned from Tony Plana how to work as an actor in a TV grind. So I really attribute them to a lot of like really everything that I do as like a professional actor of
Mhm.
note, like that if I'm lucky enough to have notoriety, I think it's because they taught me how to sustain it.
And their kindness. We had Vanessa Williams on not too long ago, and I was
Yeah.
delighted that I had this image of her just as a diva, and she was just very, very nice and normal and
Oh
down to
yeah.
earth. And I said, "You want to keep the glasses on during the interview?" Yeah, sure. This is what I do. This is how I look, you know. And it was just a refreshing thing to see. Michael Urie is our guest. We're talking about his whole life and career, but also right now he's starring in Spamalot. I had a chance to take a kid born and raised in the South Bronx, maybe late teens, to see his first Broadway play before the pandemic. And I was struck by watching him watch the stage because he'd never seen a play before, and,
Mm.
and how magical it was for him. Now, every night, there are kids who come to Spamalot who probably have not seen a play or musical before. But you're doing this sometimes 7, 8 times a week. And I'm just wondering, you want for that kid out there for it to be exciting and new and amazing, but for you, it may be the 100th time you've done it. Where does it come from, the ability to pace yourself, to be fresh, not to lose heart in a part you've played so many times before? How do you do that?
Well, exactly that, I think the answer's in your question. It's for those people. It's for the people who've never seen a show before or who are seeing a Broadway show for the first time.
Mm.
Um, they I want them to come back. I know that they'll remember it because even if you only see one Broadway show your whole life, you remember, oh yeah, I saw a Broadway show one time. Um, I want them to have a positive experience, and so I want I can't possibly go out there and not give 100% because I want them to remember it 100%.
Yeah.
And every night, we go out and sign autographs at the stage door, and somebody's seeing a Broadway show for the first time, or somebody's seeing a show for the first time. And that is really special because I remember my first Broadway show. It was Ragtime with the original cast, Brian Stokes Mitchell, Audra McDonald. And I'll never forget that. It was magical and incredible and blew my mind, and I can remember every second of it. And so that I get to be part of that because I do a lot of theater, and I'm sure there were many, many performances of Buyer and Seller where no one in the audience, 200 people, was seeing a play for the first time. But on Broadway, in a musical like Spamalot, you are getting first timers, and that is really, really important.
I want to talk too with Michael. Michael's been mentioned a couple of times in this interview, his partner Ryan, and we had the privilege of having Ryan on our program too.
Mm.
And I mentioned that because it's not a short-term relationship. This has been going on for years with you two. And I'm just wondering how, we're in my business, we're celibate priests, we never marry, but I am mystified when I counsel people who are married at how they keep relationship fresh and going and creative. When you're with someone that you love a long time, how do you make it exciting, new, refreshing, and life-giving?
It's a lot of patience,
Okay.
a lot of love. We have to like each other. I think that's a big part of it. We really like each other. Um, we also like, sometimes I'm up, sometimes I'm down, and vice versa. And um, we know we know each other so well that when he needs a lift, I know it, and vice versa. And so I think that partnership thing is
Mm.
picking up the slack, when the other person needs it, which can be um, which if I wasn't there to do that and he wasn't there to do that, then we would lose trust and we would lose confidence in one another. Um, but he's always been there for me, and I've always been there for him, and I think he makes me laugh. I make him laugh. I think those things really help, and he's the first person I want to. When something happens to me, and I think, oh, I'm gonna tell Ryan about that. He's the one I want to tell. Um, it's that person. He's that person for me, and I'm very lucky. We've been together 15 years.
Wow.
We celebrated 15 years in October, and that's cool. It's really, I really, I feel really glad that acquaintances. Almost every time I see an acquaintance, they say, "Hey, how's Ryan?"
Wow.
And it means a lot. That to be sort of tied to a person that I like so much, and that other people want to know about.
Isn't that great? And you're describing right now what every heterosexual couple that I counsel says too in a good marriage, a good relationship. So it goes back to
Yeah,
that notion of love being love, being love. I'm happy that in the Catholic Church we have a guy like Pope Francis who, after meeting with guys who were gay in Chile, said the Pope doesn't care that you're gay, God doesn't care that you're gay, you only care, God only cares, and the Pope only cares that you live good lives, and you live a good life. And
mm,
uh, I have to say though, I think one of the first times I saw you on stage was in the Temperamentals, and that was going back to an age when there was such intolerance. Just in the 15 years that you're together with Ryan, or since you come into maturity, do you feel a lot safer about the world in terms of acceptance and embrace?
yeah, for sure. When we first dated, I was hesitant to hold hands in public
Yeah,
or be affectionate in public. We had an experience at a bar once where we were uh, being affectionate, not
right.
gratuitously, but, you know, arms around each other, and we got cut off. They cut us off. We tried to order another round, and they said, "No, you're cut off." And we were like, "What? Why?" And they said someone said you were being rowdy, and it was not rowdy. That's not what it was. That was not the term
No, no.
to describe what we were doing. What we were doing was being affectionate towards one another, and it was bothering somebody, and they said something. And this was in New York City, in Manhattan, at a bar that, I had been to many, many times. So a lot's changed. I don't think that would happen so much now.
But go to that concept of theater as community, as church. Here's my wondering question though, as a non-member of that family. So you do 6 months, a year together. If you're really lucky with a play that lasts, you love these people. You work with them every day, and they're like family. But I often wondered the night of a closing. Like the good thing about my church is hopefully it never closes, but
Yeah.
there's an end to a theater experience. Like, does it hurt to have it end?
Yeah. It's very, sometimes you're tired and it's time for the show to end. Sometimes the show ends because the people stopped coming.
Yeah.
Sometimes the TV show gets canceled. Sometimes it's just one day, you work one day with a group of people and that's it. And I've been very lucky. I've had so many different jobs and I've had 1 day jobs that were incredible. I've had 4-month jobs I wish I could forget, but the camaraderie of the people, especially in the theater where, you're working so hard together
Mhm.
and you're all in you're an ensemble. And it's at night, so there's a lot more socializing than with the TV family, because you go out after the show, or it's just different because it's at night, or you're in a long rehearsal and you have dinner breaks together, and um, it can be really sad to leave a family, and sometimes the family stays together. I did Torch Song off Broadway and then again on Broadway, and that has been a really tight family. That cast has remained quite close. They all came to see Spamalot last week, actually, and that's really special when that happens. But it doesn't happen every time. Not all groups of not all chemical makeups are lasting, like that one was. Sometimes the cast is just too big for something like that to happen. This is a really, I mean, the one I'm in right now is really, really special. A Broadway musical is a whole different beast, though. There's so many people. It's not just like the six actors on stage and a few people backstage.
Right,
This
right.
is like cast of nearly 30, and crew of that or more, plus there's the front of house, there's security, there's the company management, stage management, there's the orchestra, there's all of the wardrobe people. I mean, there's just so many people. Plus then there's the marketing people and the press people and the producers, and there's just all these people that come that are part of the Spamalot family. So that's a big group to keep sort of together. I think the core group, the cast, and the people that are on stage, we're really tight, and I hope that we can stay together and stay close. But some people will leave. The cast will change, and hopefully it'll be a really long run, and it'll change a lot.
I want to thank Michael Urie for being with us and personally speaking. Michael, good to have you back. And for our listeners and watchers, go see Spamalot and see Sir Robin in action. But whether you see him here or in another play or musical, Michael's just a wonderful actor. But I wanted, especially in this interview, for folks to recognize that he's also an amazingly kind, good, insightful, sensitive person. And I'm just so grateful to have you on again. And thank you for being with us. And thank you for all the good that you do, Michael.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much for having me.
I want to thank you for being with us and personally speaking. If you need to reach me for any reason, you can write me at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. You probably listen to this program on the Catholic channel, channel 129. You can also watch us on YouTube at Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante. We're also on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Msgr Jim Lisante, as well as Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer, Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jadovitz. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.